We all want our adult single children to grow up happy, but do we at times put too much pressure on their love lives? My next guest says there are ways to encourage our singles without discussing dating. Krystal Guerra is a marketing strategist and keynote speaker who joins me now. And there seems to be a lot of pressure around dating for single children, especially when they're kind of in those adult and college years when we're thinking they need to be finding somebody.
Yeah.
So why do we as parents kind of do that? It's like a pressure that we subconsciously put on our kids.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of it comes from a place of love, for sure. I mean, I'm really close to my mom, and I know that she always wants the best for me and definitely means well. But I think that a lot of it also comes from your own experience, your own level of perception. My mom, for example, she was very close to my dad, kind of old school traditional thinking, where it was like, well, you need someone to take care of you, you need someone to help you out and be there. And so for her, it was really coming from a place of that, like, hey, I want to help you out. But fortunately, we kind of live in a day and age where you have way more choices, and you have career paths and different things like that.
And so was that something that your mom and dad did talk to you a lot about?
Luckily they found a good balance, and that's kind of one of the things that I want to talk a little bit about is the balance between the two. I never felt pressure as much, and I think it's because we were a generation removed. My parents aren't from here, so that kind of helped from a social pressure. They weren't, used to, hearing a lot of people talk about their kids and dating, and the school pressures for them were very, very different, for sure.
Well, and I was saying, I kind of wish my parents would have talked to me more about it. They were a little kind of just let me do their own thing. So the balance is, I think, the key. But how can then, I know you have some tips for us parents, learn to help our kids embrace kind of that single time in their lives?
Definitely. So the first one is just have them love their lane and understand that being in a relationship isn't a reward for being a great person or anything like that, just like being single isn't a punishment for anything. And so really embracing kind of the phase of life that they're in, much like the seasons, it's just a kind of a season that you're in, and to really embrace it and love that time and get to know yourself.
It can be hard for people in kind of those 20s or maybe even 30s when they're doing the comparison game with those around them. What tips do you have for those kids when they're doing that?
Absolutely. So I refer to that as FOMO. I talk to a lot of kids about that. So the fear of missing out, and social media definitely doesn't make it easier. I think for that you again, really need to get good at kind of turning off the noise and understanding that everything that you see on social media isn't always as it seems. And, just because someone changes their Facebook relationship status, not to get into the comparison game and really become self-aware of what works for you at that time.
Yeah, and that's something I stress too, that we need to start teaching our kids from the time they're this big, and then maybe they'll get it by the time they're in their 20s. Okay, what's your next tip?
So cultivating relationships is a really important one, not relationships with just your immediate family, but just overall in general. Like, how do you make sure that you have healthy relationships, and what does a healthy relationship look like? So understanding boundaries. I took a class that was actually taught through the city that was how to avoid dating jerks. And it was super helpful in the sense that you got a lot of statistical data on what defines a healthy relationship. And a lot of times we get carried away, I think, from Disney movies. I watched a lot of Disney movies growing up, so I was like, great, everything just flows and it's happily ever after.
Yeah.
And so just understanding, like I said, what are healthy boundaries and what standards and values and what that looks like for you.
And so you're talking about cultivating relationships, not just romantic relationships, but that they need to cultivate all their relationships.
Exactly. So just having a positive network, especially as you look to advance in your career, especially for those teens that are, later in high school or prepping for college, a big thing that I emphasize is your network is your net worth. And so whether that's relationships from a friendship standpoint or, eventually relationships that can lead to a great business partnership, it's just knowing how to have conversations with people and, be authentic with those.
All right, now your next tip is advise commitment to progress. Are you talking about here, again, the not comparing?
Yes. So, and then commitment to progress, just understanding that start that business, finish your college degree. I know when I was in school, I met a lot of girls that I was like, what are you interested in doing? What do you want to do? And it was a lot of, well, I'm going to get married. And then I was like, okay, but what, you know, like
What
what else
if?
is, what,
Yeah.
what if that doesn't happen right away? And I've definitely have found that in my own personal life and with other girlfriends where sometimes, you know, life doesn't go as planned, not in a bad way, it's just different. And so prepare to, you know, in the meantime, finish your degree, start your business, travel the world, and just experience what else life has to offer.
Yeah, progress in other ways if that lane is not working out for you right then.
Absolutely. And one of the big things that I talk a lot about too is that the relationship that you have with yourself really defines and sets the tone for the relationships you have with others. So get to know yourself and enjoy that time.
Okay, and the last one I think is where all of the parents' ears out there needs to perk up because might be the most important one. What is it?
Yes, absolutely. So the last one is just to not make it about yourself.
As a parent.
As a parent.
Yes.
Yep. And I think that's probably the one that I hear the most about is that I really want grandbabies, you know, so let's get started on that. Or I want to be an empty nester, and the comparison game with siblings too. A great example is my sister. My eldest brother and my youngest sister are both married, and my sister got married when she was 20. And so I'm so thankful that my mom never pegged us against each other, and she was very much like, what do you enjoy doing? That's great. Encouraging me in things that I'm passionate about, unrelated to the way that my sister was living.
And what are some of the ways that parents make it about themselves? Give me like a couple ways they do that.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it is you just get excited to share with your friends from like a wedding standpoint. I've heard that from a lot of daughters where they're just like, I can't wait to have a big wedding and invite everybody and have everyone kind of see what my kids are up to. A lot of times I think as parents we get caught up in that same fear of missing out, and we see what our friends are doing and their family, like I said, their grandkids. So we get caught up in that comparison with our own kids that way.
Okay, thank you so much, Krystal. These are some great tips for us. I think a lot of us are either there or we will be there soon.
Absolutely.
Where can people find you?
You can find me online, so krystalguerra.com, also on Instagram, Facebook. I'd love to share more tips and content, so check it out.
Thank you so much.